This content is brought to you in part by Supreme Auctions, the only luxury auction company recommended by the Institute. Supreme Auctions is widely recognized as the first auction company to design a program to work alongside and in partnership with luxury real estate professionals and their clients. Go to supremeauctions.com to learn more. We're here today with Jordan and Jan Ayan, and we are looking forward to having a conversation from an agent's perspective about the importance of staging homes, particularly in the luxury price point, which may be a little different than what we think of in terms of staging in what I like to call bread and butter price points. So, Jordan and Jan, welcome. Tell us just a little bit about your market area and how your team is made up.
So we are based in Scottsdale, Arizona, and our team is Jan, who handles the design and the look and feel, and a lot of the marketing things that we do. Our daughter, who does that as well, and our grandson, who helps out occasionally. And we are Scottsdale. We primarily focus on the northern end of Scottsdale. Scottsdale is a long, 22-mile long city, so we basically focus on the luxury segment of the market here. Our average price point is right about 1.7.
Excellent, excellent. And Jan, what's your background?
So my background actually is accounting, but I always had a passion for styling our own homes. And then we got into large scale renovation projects on our homes. And I styled and designed our office space. And it was just always something that I enjoyed doing. And this provided an opportunity for me to do that more full-time rather than on a side project.
So
excellent.
We've only been doing this 3 years now. And it all started because Jan wanted to flip a house. And I had no interest in flipping a house. So I said, okay, if you want to flip a house, I'll go get my license so we can do our own deals. Well, we flipped one house. We took a basically 1,200 square foot house and turned it into a 2,400 square foot house. And at the end of that project, decided we didn't like flipping houses. But we had a lot of experience with luxury real estate. Jan and I built 4 other businesses, and we've had homes in Hawaii, Chicago, here, Bellevue, Washington, and we know that price point. So we said, what if we take what we know from our other businesses about marketing and sales and apply it to real estate?
Excellent. And what an interesting geographical variety that you have experience with, and then bringing in other skill sets. But it's hard to believe that it's only been 3 years. And so you discovered a passion that suited everybody, that also has been a good fit for you professionally. Jen, you used the word styling, and I want to explore that a little bit with both of you, because I think a lot of real estate professionals are familiar with the idea of staging, particularly in entry-level price points, and how important that is to help someone be able to vision what a home would look like staged. But as the price point goes up, a lot of sellers in particular don't see the importance of that, or they see it in a different way. And even just the subtle shift between the word staging and styling is pretty significant. Can you tell me what your approach is and how that has evolved over the last year?
Well, from our perspective, I think we feel that staging can be a little bit stark, a little bit cold.
Roll in the furniture.
You know, and we would continue to see the same pieces of furniture in different price points. You know, obviously they were reused time and time again in almost the exact same way. And that's just not how we could function. We're kind of in the weeds of the detail of our properties. We like doing that. We feel that they set our properties apart. And we realized that we were really producing more catalog shoot type of imagery, where outdoor spaces were really filled with the things that one would use in an outdoor space. You know, we would have cocktail setups and or, you know, wine glasses, and, you know, just down to the detail and the imagery with, you know, magazines open on a lounge and a towel thrown just exactly as someone might do it. And we felt that that allowed our properties to feel aspirational in terms of their lifestyle for our clients. And many times we would have agents bring potential buyers to a property and ask if someone lived there. And a number of times, no one did live in the home at that time because of just the way that we set it up. And so to us, that's the styling piece of it, that it just adds that depth and dimension that staging didn't feel as if it presented for us.
I absolutely agree. And just to interject there, I was thinking in my head about all the times that I walk into a home that is staged in that traditional way, and I immediately recognize that it's staged. So it's a testament to you to be able to style in a way that someone actually thinks that that people live there. So kudos for achieving that.
And say, oh, look, they bought the blue package or something.
You know, it is. It's very, you know, I think when we realized about the staging versus styling aspect of it, it's about that layering and that dimension that's added that really makes a space feel complete other than just items in a room.
Sure, it's appealing to the lifestyle proposition, as you said, Jordan. The aspirational lifestyle piece. We know how important that is in the upper tier, so it's perfect to be capitalizing on that.
We were talking about this earlier. Even ourselves, when we bought a house, we sort of had these aspirations of how we might use this space, and in reality, it's not totally sustainable, but you'd like to live that way. So Jan tries to make every space feel like you'd like to live in that space that way every day.
And could,
even though it's not always sustainable.
Right?
As
now,
she said earlier, she said, well, those pool toys are great, but where do you store them?
And that brings up a good point. You mentioned to me in conversation that your business model has changed a little bit in the last year. And so I would love for you to backtrack just a little bit and talk about what you were doing maybe a little more than a year ago in terms of full furniture staging and how that has shifted and how you plan to move forward with that.
Sure. So I think part of what helped us be successful early on is that when we took a property on, we would completely stage and style it. And it ended up having 7 storage units full of furniture, one of which was just pillows, an entire storage unit of pillows.
not quite close.
I have a customer who would want that warehouse, right? Her husband accuses her of having a warehouse full of pillows.
Actually, it was pillows and soap.
And towels.
And towels. Because, you know, Jan talked about the layering, and that layering comes in a variety of different ways. So we introduce different scents into a home using soaps, different kinds of soaps that have different scents, just to add another layer of the element. And Jan's, that's why I kid her, she had probably 50 bars of soap, you know, wrapped in pretty paper and stuff like that.
But I imagine that the soap is a very different sensory experience than, say, you know, a plug-in air freshener that we see.
No plug-in air fresheners.
No plug-in air fresheners. That's perfect.
We actually, funny, spend a lot of time smelling soap and looking for things that just look and feel fresh and clean, so that when a potential buyer steps into the bathroom of a home, that's what they are sensing right away, is that it just smells clean, it smells fresh. It doesn't necessarily smell like someone's particular cologne or aftershave lotion or overdone cleaning products. There's just a cleanliness to it. It tends to be some things in the light lemon or, you know, light citrus groups that tend to work best. And it's very subtle, but it's there.
We have found a company now that does actual marketing scents. They develop, and it's not like a plug-in air freshener. It's a fairly expensive unit, but it's what's used. Like if you go to the Wynn Hotel, there's a scent associated with that.
Right.
We actually have the machine that can make the Wynn Hotel scent if somebody wants.
Wow, that particular scent.
Yeah.
All right, so let's back up. You
I-
mentioned that you had 7 warehouses of furniture, and you're not going to have 7 warehouses of furniture going forward.
So I think getting us into the business, being able to do that staging got us initial clients. But we realized as time went on, first of all, inventory sits in storage for a long time. So it's not always in place somewhere. So there's a large carrying cost to that. It's expensive to buy. And we realized that as we developed as a company and as the styling element got to be bigger, that we could go in and have a house without necessarily furnishing it, but putting the other elements in and having it look like we wanted it to look.
So maybe more like vignettes.
I would say more like vignettes, but initially too, our clients' homes were vacant. And we were finding more as we were becoming more known in the community that they were clients who lived in the Scottsdale area the majority of the year, if not all of the year. So these were homes that were fully furnished, and suggesting that all of those items should be removed and replaced for other items wasn't necessarily a good business model for us, and it wasn't necessarily without disruption for our client, a major disruption. And, and certainly a discomfort to it. And, people would feel awkward sometimes about having other furnishings in their space. Can we use it? We have a dog, what do we do?
And dogs ruin a couple of the carpets.
That's okay. That's okay. But so, as we started thinking about more and more, and then I think as we developed as a team, that particularly our daughter and I, we became stronger at being able to work with furnishings that our clients had, that we would be able to see them in a more clear and different light and a different perspective. And maybe we rearrange furniture. Sometimes we do remove furniture and it's kept off site, or maybe even in a garage or something somewhere. We do add bedding and pillows and, that sort of thing. So we do still have some element of decor, I guess, if you will. So it's not without that, but it's not necessarily the large scale furnishings like sofas and dining tables and that sort of thing. They tend to be smaller side tables or accessory items. Outdoor furniture, we do still do that.
That's an important,
on a larger scale.
That's a very important part of the homes that we sell here. This is an indoor-outdoor living community. We have 300 days of sunshine every year. So we've got to be able to tell that outdoor story. And a lot of times people don't, again, it goes back to it's aspirational, which can't necessarily live that way. So they don't have the outdoor showing as nicely as it could.
Sure. Especially after a little weathering in the Arizona sun, right?
Exactly.
So I was thinking in my mind about the challenge that sometimes comes from the conversation with a seller who is living in a home and it's furnished, how to suggest to them that that perhaps you could improve their decor, right? That's got to be a challenging conversation. But also, if you're in a market that has low inventory and is selling quickly, I imagine that there could be a little pushback from a seller who thinks that the house is just going to sell itself and they don't need to do anything to prepare it for market. So what kind of conversations are you having, or what are you hearing from sellers as you address this?
So I think in a hot market, where this becomes more important is that in our market right now, last week, 58% of the closings were above the list price. Now, you want to be in that group of people that are getting 14 offers and, all of them cash over the asking price. If your house doesn't, I always say sparkle. If it doesn't sparkle, your chances of getting that decrease. And if it does sparkle, you're going to have a lot of people. We had one home not too long ago we sold. We put it on the market for $2.1 million. Jan and her team went in and they did a lot to make that house sparkle. And we had 100 people through it in 3 days. We had 14 offers and we closed at 2.4. So I think all of those little elements made a big difference in how that house showed. I think you probably agree. And that's part of what, and then it comes back to, we get it into the imagery, we do videos. So we have so many points where people can connect with this. And there's a term that we use, both of our backgrounds also have some marketing in it, and it's called anchoring. And what we try to do is make sure that we anchor certain things in the mind of that prospective buyer through what Jan and Ashley and our team do. So for example, it can be the sense that we talked about. It can be a story, because we think every home has a story. And we actually just sold our own house a month ago. And it sold in 3 days over asking price. And the anchor point that we had a very beautiful lemon tree. And during pandemic, I decided to make limoncello.
Made a crop that year.
So we made the limoncello, and then we always take people on a quick tour of the house, just because if an agent walks into a $2 million home, they don't know whether the bedrooms are at the left, right. We like to give them a lay of the land. And I'd always point out the lemon tree and I'd say, this lemon tree makes the best limoncello. And if you buy the house, I'll give you the recipe.
Oh.
And then as we went through the house, we got to a refrigerator where there was a bottle of limoncello. And I said, this is the limoncello. Would you like to try it? Of course, everybody did. And our house became known as the limoncello house. So that's anchored in that person. Remember the limoncello house. Remember the pink flamingo house. It can be different things. Remember the candy house. So there's always these little elements that Jan and her team put into it, or we try to come up with the story that we can tell about that home that makes it different and special.
I am a fan of limoncello, by the way. Just saying. So I hope that your new home has a lemon tree, or that you will get one so that you can continue that. But it's really, really an interesting angle to take it even further than the visual presentation and create something that is a meaningful experience. It's the difference between people coming through a new listing, 50, 100 deep, and saying, yeah, I could live in this house and I need one, so I'll make an offer, versus creating the sensation of, I have to have this house and I will do whatever it takes to have it. Mm-hmm. So
I'm sorry. We consider part of what we do is we're the hosts of whoever is coming to visit that home. And our job is to make them feel comfortable, to make them feel welcome. And we, for example, assign a powder room that we style. We have linen-like disposable cloths and very nice soap for them to use. And we introduce that room to them when they step onto the property, that if they need to visit the facilities, this is the place to go. And so we start at the door, and we have refreshments, we have water. We just have a variety of things that we do to have people feel that they're welcome, and that they truly are guests there, and encourage them to stay longer on the property.
It's that white glove treatment, right? It's the difference between ordinary and exceptional. And I think that's what we're all about, is striving for all of the different pieces that make our service exceptional. Now, question of the hour. Who pays for the staging? Right? This is the number one question that I get when I'm delivering the training and we talk about staging, is who pays for it? So I imagine that this has shifted for you as well as your business model has shifted, but tell us how you approach it.
Well, in the beginning, we covered 100% of the staging. It just was our inventory and we would cover it. Now, when we do primarily the styling, we don't charge clients for that. We figure if we're selling a $2 or $3 million house, to, charge them $500 to put the styling elements in, or $1,000, or whatever number you come up with, doesn't put us in the best professional light. It doesn't put us in the light of these people know what they're doing and they're confident in what they're doing, that it's going to have an effect. So I think that's been a major piece of how we've approached it. I understand economically, sometimes an agent doesn't necessarily have the means to do that. But there are things that they can do along the lines of some of the more simple things that don't cost a lot of money that can make a home look better. Would you agree?
I would agree. And I think for us, because we have purchased and sold our own real estate, there were times that we probably had a distaste at the end of the transaction for that commission number that we were paying for what we considered very little service and effort on our behalf. And that from the beginning was our approach, going back to the concierge service or the white glove service, that we wanted to ensure that no client of ours had any distaste when they saw that number, that they felt that we had entirely earned it.
Do you get pushback from any of your sellers who think that their house looks just fine the way that it is? And how do you handle that?
For the most part, I don't think we get a lot of pushback.
We don't usually get too much pushback. I think we prepare the client from the initial meeting early on that this is a transaction, that it's time to disconnect, that potential buyers are not looking to purchase their lifestyle. They're looking to find the buyer's new lifestyle. And so I think we try to begin that psychological shift in thinking very quickly, and then we just reinforce it. And I hope that they feel that we are so confident about what we are suggesting that they do, and along with all of our own marketing and all the elements that we put into play, that they realize that, yes, this is the team that's going to get my home sold. We do our best to cause as little disruption to our client as we possibly can. We get to know each of our clients very well, and so we understand what sensitivities they each have. Some are very free and relaxed about everything. Others, we have tighter parameters in which we need to work, and that's okay.
Something that I'm taking away from this conversation is that I imagine that other real estate professionals are eager to show your listings because they know that they're always going to be presented in their best light. So that's definitely something to consider. Now, what other tools do you find useful, particularly as an Institute member, Jordan, that set you apart and give sellers absolutely no option but to choose you?
Well, I think initially, when I first went through the program, the piece that I took away that really resonated with me, having had multiple businesses, was the concept of a market report. And we set out in our first few months to create an exceptional market report that we then published. I think the first one was 20 some odd pages, that we put heavy duty content in, that we did heavy market analysis. And I took it from the perspective of, if I was a business person getting information about any other product, how would I want to see that shared with me? And I've seen a lot of marketing material from other professionals, and I thought, okay, so let's try to do that. And then Jan and our daughter wrote articles. I wrote articles. We got all of the data together and we sent this out. And we got our first listings as a result of doing that work. And we've done that market report now 6 times, I think. We're going to scale it back because we think our reputation is built to the point that we don't need to do it as large. I think the last one we did was 32 pages.
Sure.
And it gets expensive. I mean, it was very expensive because we sent it in the mail. It wasn't just an electronic report, but it was what differentiate us at the start.
Absolutely. And it also won you a marketing award and still lives in our institute training. So I get the pleasure to show that. But you've brought up a good point, both in the shift of how you were approaching the staging, and then what your budget was for spending on your market report. All of these things vary based on whether you're building business or whether you're maintaining or shifting in a different direction. So I'm seeing the same sort of logic, business logic, that you're applying in the shifting to the styling versus full staging as you are to the luxury market report. And so what are your plans going forward? You said you were going to scale back the content a little bit. What have you found the content in the market report? Because yours hits all the cylinders in terms of trends, market information, listings, case study. I love the buyer case study. That is one of my favorite things. And then also charitable involvement. So how are you going to scale that back to hit the points that have resonated the most with your clients and your sphere of influence?
Well, we still do the charity element. And that charity element, we ask the client to give us the name of charity that they would like us to donate to at the end. And that actually came about as a result of our first listing, where the person actually was on the board and had started a nonprofit. And part of the way we got the listing was to say, if you let us list this house, we've never listed a house before, but when we sell it, we'll donate, and I think it was 10 or 15% of our commission to your nonprofit. And that got us the first listing. So we're not changing that. We don't tell people up front that we do that, although we do mention it in the report. But I think that's one thing that people really like. It's not the charity that we pick. It's a charity that's important to them. So that's continuing. We're scaling back the market report just so that it doesn't have the volume that it did, and it's not so expensive to send out. We're doing a lot of it digitally now. Since we've started building a following, we have blog posts that go into a lot of the things that we do in the report. And I think one of the things is to have consistency there. So we've consistently posted on this blog now at least once every month, sometimes 3 or 4 times. During the pandemic, we had posts just about every week about what was going on. What else are we doing?
Well, I think with taking the market report, though, basically we still have all of the same elements, but we've just divided them and send them differently. So rather as a 32-page novel, if you will,
right,
document to read, it's a big, report. Then, for example, we've then shifted to, we'll take one element of it and we might put it into an 8.5 by 11 trifold, and we'll send that out. And then a certain period of time later, we'll send out a buyer's or seller's case study. So all of the pieces are there. We've just parsed them out and send them out at different times.
And it sounds like you are able to capitalize on those elements that are successful in order to stay in front of people more frequently, right? Because you've built a book of business, but you have to stay in front of them. And so rather than waiting for a longer period of time to develop one large piece that's more challenging in terms of the content as well as costly in the delivery, you've figured out a way to meld that into an ongoing campaign.
Exactly.
And so people are still getting the case study. They're just getting it in either a postcard format or, as Jan said, the trifold. It's not the big 32-page report. And we can send it out a lot less expensive. We can target different areas if we want to a little bit easier. So it's the same data ultimately we're producing, just in bite-sized pieces as opposed to a whole loaf.
And that consistency is so important. I learned this the hard way. A market report that we send quarterly, we decided to skip an issue for some reason. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And people started reaching out to us asking us to check the database to make sure they hadn't fallen off because they didn't see that particular issue. So, it may not have that same sense of ROI as other things that we try to track, but staying front and center with good quality material. I'm delighted to hear how you have shifted your approach to that while still incorporating the main principle.
Well, and in the back of our minds, every time we do a marketing piece, is the sense of, if we only get one listing because of this, we've more than paid for the advertising costs, and we've got a new client, and we've got referrals that'll come in. So we never look at marketing as just an expense. We look at it as an investment, and it's
Absolutely.
more business.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because a lot of agents approach their marketing dollars. Number one, if they're spending money to market a listing, they're looking for that particular piece or expenditure to sell the listing, when in fact it is leveraging you to earn more business down the road, and that snowball effect. So I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Yes, so we do send out just listed postcards. We don't send out little ones. We send out the big 8.5 by 11, and we send out the just sold cards, because that's our marketing. That's what's going to bring us future business. But we've also now started getting referral customers, which there's nothing better than when a client said, you have to use this agent because they're the best agent we've ever dealt with. And the client walks in and they're sold on us. We don't have to sell ourselves at that point. And that's,
Yeah.
I think a lot of the marketing pieces have added up over the years to help us get there.
So what else is on your horizon of things that you might be approaching differently? The market that we're in today may be very different than what the market is when someone listens to this podcast in the future, and our market is always shifting. So what are you looking at doing differently, other than what we've already talked about in the next year?
So one of the things that we've gone through in our own lives, we were looking to downsize in the next couple of years. And when we saw this is the time to do it, and we realized there's a large chunk of people that are our age that maybe want to get out of a 6,000 square foot home and into something different, a different lifestyle. So that's what we're exploring, is what kind of lifestyles are available to people that want to move to the next thing in their life. And I think that's where we're going to focus our energy.
And that's fantastic, because you can utilize your personal experience. I'm of the mind that every real estate professional should indeed buy or sell a property of their own every few years, to remind ourselves what it feels like to be on the transaction side rather than our side. But I think that you've hit the nail on the head in understanding that the pipeline has to change. And so the clients in the pipeline that has gotten you to where you are now may shift and be looking for something else. So rather than riding the tide up with them, you have to figure out how to engage them. As you say, perhaps they're looking to downsize, but maybe at the same time, they're looking to downsize their primary residence, but maybe acquire a secondary or a third residence. And so are you interacting more with realtors outside of your market area to explore the referral opportunity for your clients that might fall into that category?
Absolutely. I mean, there are certain markets that feed us. I think at one of the Institute events a couple of years ago, Diane brought that great realtor.com, where's your market coming from? And I still go to that. And I try to form relationships with as many professionals as I can that are, especially in the markets that I know we feed or that feed us back. Because I think when you have somebody in there, like we had a client and they came to us and they were interested in a home here, selling their home in Chicago, and a home in Las Vegas. And they didn't buy a home here, but we referred them to the agent in Chicago that sold their home, and we referred them to the agent in Las Vegas that sold them the new home.
Score.
So it doesn't get any better than that.
Absolute score.
And that client still likes us. So if they ever decide to come back, they're going to call us.
Right. Or if they know anybody that's headed in your direction. No, that's fantastic. And all the things that we have talked about together really kind of resonate in the idea of not being narrow-minded or wearing blinders to be focused entirely on how do I get that next transaction? How do I, the square peg kind of vision, and instead thinking about how to capitalize on other opportunities and develop long-lasting relationships that yield in spades in the long run, as opposed to being so focused on a single immediate action.
I think anybody that approaches this as a transaction business is not going to succeed, because it's not about the transactions. It's about the relationships. It's about the people. It's about the lifestyle you're introducing them to. And if you focus on transactions, that's all you're going to get is transactions. It's not going to get necessarily build your business.
And if I may share a quick example, the very first home that Jordan listed that we sold that he had mentioned, the buyer ultimately of that home was of a particular lifestyle. Their circumstances changed. They contacted Jordan to list that house, and
I didn't represent them as buyers.
He didn't represent
Right.
the buyer. Jordan represented the seller, and but they contacted him. The house was probably about 50% empty, so we did stage that one more fully and style it. And that was just a couple, probably closer in age to Jordan and I, who had initially purchased it. It was resold to a much younger couple from California that had 2 young children that both found themselves during 2020 in a position to be able to work from home. They each owned their own businesses. And so entirely different from Jordan selling it initially to grandparents to selling it to a younger professional couple. And had we marketed that home and styled that home the same way we did the first time, that never would have sold to that couple. They had a completely different lifestyle, and we had to be thinking about who's looking to buy this type of home now. It isn't who it was 2 years ago. This is a completely different buyer. So let's figure out this buyer and take that approach. And that's how it sold.
I think there's only one guarantee that somebody listening down the road to this podcast is going to hear. The market's going to be different, and it will have shifted no matter how far out you go. And we've seen a lot of shift during the pandemic time in this one neighborhood, particularly that we sell a lot in, from second and retired folks to suddenly you've got young kids in these neighborhoods, parents that, again, can work from anywhere. A lot of
That are
Silicon Valley
full-time residents rather than part-time residents.
do a lot of Zoom meetings, so we always create a Zoom-worthy background in some room. And, it's a very different market than it was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And different buyers, and people are selling for different reasons.
And you are so wise to be aware of that and to shift how you're doing business in order to be relevant for today and for tomorrow. And I wish that all of us had that open-mindedness to not want things to always be exactly as they were.
That's so that makes this work, because when I don't see it, she does. And occasionally I see it and she doesn't. But most of the time it's the other way around.
It's all about teamwork. And
we do have a good team, with our daughter. And we also have an assistant that works with us that helps. One of the things that we do on all of our homes is we never put a home on a lockbox. We always have someone go and open up that home.
Be present
during the showing. I've had enough times where I've taken buyers out, and you walk into a home that's totally dark and it's dusty, and somebody's going to spend $3 million on this home, and they're coming in and they don't know left from right, where's the bedroom, that kind of thing. So we make sure that during that time that we give them exposure to the home, but that home just sparkles, as I said. And then the other place that we kind of differentiate ourselves is when we have a second showing and a third showing. So each time we do something, and we didn't do it as much during the pandemic, but
people were more sensitive to interacting.
Like we had a beautiful house that had a beautiful fire pit outside, and we put it on the market, and we had a buyer come, and they wanted to come back for a second showing, and they had a young daughter. Jan got petty fours, and we had a bottle of champagne, and we had a bottle of sparkling apple juice for the young child. And these people sat at the fire pit for a good hour and a half. They drank 2 bottles of champagne.
I think
Jan thinks their agent drank one. But at the end, they wrote up an offer, and those people own that home now.
Well, that is perhaps the most fantastic way to wrap up our time together, because it drives home the point that we need to be better, that we're striving to provide absolutely exceptional service, that just ordinary is not good enough when you're taking it to the next level and the next price point. And I am delighted to get to spend a little time hearing how things have shifted for you, hearing that you are embarking on a next chapter. And I cannot wait to be able to connect with you again sometime soon to hear how that's going and what might come next. So thank you so much for your time with us today. And I hope that all of the listeners out there will take away some nuggets and follow the excellent example that you are setting.
It was a pleasure to talk to you. And it's always great to see you. Now, hopefully in the next year, we'll get to do it in person again.